got some juicy stuff because Asuka doesn't normally pop off like this, and she did. She had time today because this past weekend, Asuka let off a series of tweets against Japanese wrestling and Japanese media. She went on to state the following, and these are quotes from her Twitter, and these are screenshots that I'm reading from. I don't flatter anyone. Even in Japan, the media hated me because I don't flatter the media. In Japan, everyone was flirting with the media except for me. Except me. I fought the media alone to take care of my fans. That's why some of the Japanese media still hate me. That's why I've always been a freelancer, and everyone in Japan knows I am anti Joshi pro always. The former editor-in-chief of Pro Wrestling Weekly has made this point on several occasions. That is, Stardom is an organization that was created to defeat me. It is an organization that was created to destroy me personally, but they failed to defeat me. I don't know what happened to them after that because I came to America. And just for reference, because I had to do my research, I don't think that Asuka actually ever worked for Stardom, but she did work for other promotions in Europe, in Japan, as well as some other places. But she was never a Joshi girl. She was never a Stardom girl. What do you think about these comments? And what do you
It's
think about these? Yeah. What do you think about these comments?
it's crazy 'cause I know she's pissed. I know she's pissed because Asuka will write most things in Japanese. On a regular ass day, she'll write everything in Japanese. But I had to translate shit. She wanted to know how she wanted us to understand how pissed off she was. She made sure everything was already pre-translated in English. All right. So that's how I know Asuka is fucked up. And I read every little bit of it. Homegirl's going off for a whole entire hour and some hour in the middle of the night. Asuka had enough. Um I do not watch Stardom. I know some of Asuka's work. I do not all know all of Asuka's work. I was personally introduced to Asuka via NXT or whatnot. But it seems like they have like a long-standing rivalry with each other, and I'm not. My thing is that like okay, what exactly provoked her? Was it
Mm,
because they wrote about her elsewhere
I have
in
no
some
idea, to be
media
honest.
thing? I just want to know. I understand she already had an issue with Stardom, but and maybe I want to look it up right now. But what exactly provoked her to go off in this very moment to choose now? Did
Mm,
Stardom respond to her following her losing her title on a pay per view and whatnot, and they just want to comment on it? Because I could have swore I saw an article that was commenting on nobody's ready for Asuka, and I think they were mocking her or some sorts.
yeah.
But as far as Asuka goes, listen, I may not entirely understand the whole situation will it up to this, but I love Asuka. I think she's an amazing wrestler. I think she's an amazing woman. Um, this girl be wrestling at lightning speed at the age of 40 something. Like she is amazing. And Asuka don't really speak up for very much, and she's dealt with a lot of bullshit in WWE. You think she'd be
Mm,
running her mouth about that? You know, what I mean, for her to be running her mouth about this, it had to be crucial. It had to be serious. Whatever side Asuka's on, I'm gonna be sitting on, because Asuka's not really problematic. I feel like she's a woman that shows up and does her job, and I feel like she has a love and passion for pro wrestling. She changed the game when it came to Japan, and she was specifically invited into WWE so she could change the game of pro wrestling in America. And I
absolutely.
felt like she's done so within her capacity, even despite being suppressed by certain people in WWE.
Mm.
I think it's pretty fucked up that Stardom has something against Asuka. I would like to understand why, what specifically they're having an issue with Asuka for.
Mm.
As you just stated, it has to do because she's not Joshi, she's pro wrestling. What did they mean by that? What does she mean by that? Do you happen to know? Can you break that down for me?
Do I happen to know as far as like what does she mean by like Joshi is against me or that?
Yeah, why is Joshi like she's talking about, but she had her issues with Stardom. She's saying Joshi's against me
Yeah.
and she's pro wrestling.
So I from what I gathered, I think it was just a matter of like Stardom was used because if you look at Asuka's wrestling career, she was in Pro Wrestling Wave. She also did, pro wrestling. Like she was big on the Japanese indie circuit, and
Yeah.
she was primarily in DDT.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So when you look at it from that perspective, right? And arguably she was one of the biggest stars who wasn't involved with Stardom. And so you can kind of make the argument that that maybe an organization was created in response to her because she was a big star, and yet they needed to create other women stars to kind of combat her and kind of chip at her credibility because Asuka was the girl. You know what I mean? And she still is, in my opinion. Um, but I feel like what she's saying about Japanese media and Japanese wrestling is stuff that can be pretty applicable to what some may say about American media, right? Like, when you have a good relationship with the media, they're going to tend to treat you better. But when you're just like, listen, I'm here to show up and do my job, and you're not interested in giving narratives, or you're not interested in feeding rumors or things that are kind of outside of your job, they're not going to tend to like you because you're not giving them anything that's going to help them do their job to the best of their abilities. So I
Right.
can understand that. Um, However, here's another thing that I noticed, right? Because Asuka is currently involved with a feud against two, Io Shirai, who was a part of Stardom. And I think that this, above all else, is probably just another layer to the story, to that story of Asuka versus Io, because it is the anti-Stardom girly versus the Stardom girly. And so I just think that this is just another layer to that story. And because of it, I'm kind of really, really
Mm.
excited. I don't know like what Stardom did to
But they have
make.
good relations with one another, right?
Yeah, 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 they're cool. Like those two people are cool. But I'm not sure what the hippity hoopla is about, or what provoked Oscar to make that statement. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I'm very, very interested in this. Definitely caught my attention. But we want to know how y'all feel about this whole Oscar situation and her popping off. But speaking of popping off, Kurt Angle